Constructive Criticism is sponsored by Oasis Games. MTGOasis.com is the place to get cards for your next Magic event. Try them out with code CCMTG for 15% off of your first order, and use the code WouldThatBeGood for 4% off of every order. Want to support the show directly? Head on over to patreon.com/CCMTG to check out some awesome benefits and future goals for the show. Thanks for listening, and here's this week's episode of Constructed Criticism. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Constructed Criticism. I'm your host Spencer, and I am joined by John Stern.
Hey everyone.
And Seth Manfield.
Hello, hello.
Dude, you guys had some awesome weekends.
Yeah, we both did okay, I guess.
Yeah, I think I was working during Seth's 3-0, or Seth, you 3-0'd so fast I didn't get to watch it.
Well, you and everyone else, Spencer. I don't think it was that those matches were on video, but
oh, were you not on coverage at all?
Not the first. I don't believe that the first day that I was playing, I was, but that I was when I was in the top 16.
Can you recap your tournament in terms of like who you played?
Yeah. So.
Or do you want to do this like late in the show?
Oh, let's do it now.
All right, yeah. So I played Merchant in my first round. He's like a YouTuber who I wasn't really super familiar with until I met him. Super cool guy. I was playing Mono Red and Esper Control as my two decks. So he was playing Grixis Control. He was the only one on a Grixis deck. And then also Mono White. Was able to beat him 2-1. And then I played against Cedric next round, who was on double Mono White. And I 2-0'd him. Pretty fortunate there. He said he was like not super happy with how he played like one of the games, I think, because I got him like Xaxes with my burn spells in the mono red versus mono white match. So I was pretty happy about that. And then the last round of the day to like 3-0, where I was like really, really pumped up because I just wanted to get out of there and be in the top 16. Especially with like all of the momentum building up to it. But I was playing against Siggy, and he had like his whole family there. He was like, I was like, damn it, like I don't want to have to play against Siggy here, because like I wanted Siggy to do really well also, but like you're always gonna run into those situations in these tournaments. So like so we played like an Esper Control Mirror that I just won or whatever to finish out my day. So I was happy with it. The clean 3-0 was obviously exactly what I wanted. Before the wheels fell off on the Sweet 16 or Top 16 or whatever you want to.
Well, I'm really excited to talk to you about your match with Matt Nass. So we'll get into that during the show.
Yeah,
but
yeah, and so in the Top 16, I played against Savich, who made it up to the, he was in the top 4. Super cool guy, streamer. Really popular. I think he's from Polish or something. But anyways, and then he beat me in the Esper Control Mirror. So yeah, the Esper Control Mirror was definitely one of the main points. And then the best game of the tournament was definitely that loss that I took. The best game that I played was definitely the loss that I took to Matt there to end my event. Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit more later on, I guess.
Yeah, and then John, you played Black Green, and that I'm really excited to.
I actually didn't play Black Green.
You lied to me.
I don't think I lied. I had 2 decks in mind. I thought Black Green was the best deck, but best deck for me to play at the tournament. But I decided. So GPs are just not that useful for me right now, and I decided that it would be better for me to play the War of Invention deck that I was, I had good results with, and I was like, I don't know if I can play this in a competitive tournament. I might just get draws all the time if people are like trying to, kind of stall me out. And I'd rather kind of find out now by playing it at a GP than like work on it for 2 weeks and then maybe not play it for the PT kind of thing.
That's fair.
So yeah, I played the War of Invention deck.
Well, let's answer a Patreon question, and then let's kind of get into #AlwaysImproving and what we did a little bit in depth. This week, we have a question from Adrian that says, when learning a new deck and take it into a league, what are the best questions that I should be asking myself? And I really loved this question. He actually thought there might have been a podcast episode on this, and I think we had talked about doing one, John. But I don't know that we actually had done one yet.
It's a really good question, and I think just asking that question shows that you're kind of thinking about the right things. Because I think a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to try this deck," and they just don't even look at the deck list. They just copy paste it into, wherever the arena or Magic Online, and then just start playing games. And I guess the short answer that I would give is that if I'm trying a deck, there's 3 things I kind of want to figure out. One is I want to see if I'm trying it for a reason. So I think it's maybe well positioned. So I'm thinking, okay, these are my good matchups. These are my bad matchups. And I'll just mentally, I expect to have trouble with this deck, this deck, this deck. And then I'm playing to sort of see if I'm right. And if I'm wrong in certain matchups, then that maybe opens up doors for more questions. I also want to think about my sideboard and basically what cards if I'm copying a list, mostly what cards I want to board out in matchups. And then what things I might want to try if what my first plan isn't working. Those are basically first 2 questions I'll ask. And then also obviously just getting some experience with the cards and making sure I have a good game plan for how the deck's going to win. So I just want to kind of think about my initial answers to those questions and refine that as I play through the league.
Awesome. Seth, can I ask you, you are really good, it seems, at least to me, that when you brew a deck, you have cards in it for purpose, right? So or cards that you're excited about. So a really good example of this is your Dimir deck, right? You identified, man, I'm going to do this every time. Night Veil Spectre is not the name of this card.
Thief of Sanity.
You identified Thieves of Sanity and Hostage Taker, right? And so when you were practicing with this deck or theory crafting this deck, what were the questions you were asking yourself when defining what you needed to know about the deck?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of players are going to start the way John said, which is going to be copying someone else's list or copying some list rather than it's a lot more difficult and challenging to brew a deck completely, with no baseline to it. It is possible, obviously, but the thing that I want to be looking for is, first of all, there's going to be times, and I think everyone's done this, where you buy into a deck or you get super hyped about a deck, and then you just play a couple matches, and you're like, no, it's not for me. And that's just going to happen sometimes. I do it too. Sometimes I just realize not even that a deck is bad, because obviously, if I'm playing a deck, especially if it's a known deck that's already good, there's obviously people winning with it, but sometimes you will realize that the strategy that you are trying just doesn't fit your play style, and that's fine. But assuming that that's not the case, and you finish out the league, play your 5 matches or whatever, and you want to figure out, where to go from there, you're still interested in continuing on the deck, improving on the deck. I'm never set in my card choices, very rarely. So I like to think about what cards performed well, what cards underperformed. I will make some changes here and there to the list and kind of start recording. Once I finish my first league, I want to be keeping track of data, at least in terms of win losses, as John pointed out, matchups, figuring out how matchups are going, and then generally, obviously, you want to be winning more than you're losing. You want to feel, no one likes to be just playing and lose, but one caveat to that is that you like if you feel like you are misplaying games, sometimes like when you just pick up a deck at first and you play your first league with it, you're going to misplay, and that's fine. So that's why I don't necessarily like to keep the data, or I'll like make little marks in my data, be like, well, even though I lost, I think I could have won. And that's like, and then just like remember, like sometimes you'll just remember those sequences or remember like your mistakes. And a lot of times learning from mistakes while playing a new deck that's a perfectly reasonable way to go. And then if you keep doing it and you feel like there's something there, like it's going to, the games are going to build and you're going to get a better idea and a better feel for the deck and start to be able to make it your own and personalize it a bit more.
Yeah. One of the things that I think that you both highlighted is understanding card choices. And if I did a stream for the Quest for 10 when I was doing that on the Is It Drake's deck at the end of last standard, where I cut the search for Azcantas for treasure maps in the main deck to add more room, because I also just thought the treasure maps were better and gave me more wins. And I said in the stream, I'm specifically going to track how much better or worse these treasure maps are than the search for Azcantas were in this slot. And
yes,
go ahead.
Yes, sometimes what I like to do is like identify a specific card that I really like in that case it would be treasure map, and then once you've identified the card, then it's just like, well, like, why am I playing 0 of these, or why am I playing only 2? Why can't I just add more, or like whatever, and then just like, as you're saying, like experiment with it. If it's a card that you really like and seems to be like, why not?
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly what I did. And by the end of the stream, I was very confident. I was like, okay, I can confirm what I said, that this leads to better draws, more wins, and it interacts with my game plan in a way that kind of Surge didn't. And those are the kind of questions that I like to ask myself when trying a deck. The first league I ran through, or the first event that I ran through for that one was with somebody's list exactly from the SCG, and then as I was doing streams, I was adjusting the list and asking myself questions during that about the card choices, because that was one of my goals, was to understand the deck and understand the card choices. John, you on a podcast talked about the same thing with was it Monastery Swiftspear in Phoenix?
Well, yeah. So I tried out. I was playing the so that's really early, when basically right when Arclight Phoenix came out. I was trying the deck out kind of before it was being played, really. Like there were some 1 or 2 5-0s, and there was some people were telling me that Swiftspear was good in like a mono red version, and I didn't think it was good, but I was like, well, I'm gonna play a league and find out, and basically tested specifically with that in mind. Is like, let's see, like, is Swiftspear worthwhile? And I don't even remember how I did in the league, but like I was specifically testing just to find out if that card was good.
I think you 5-0'd.
I think I did 5-0, and I concluded that it was not good, which is funny because like I was winning because of the power level of the other cards, and Swiftspear was kind of not doing much.
You both talked about sideboard and like questioning your sideboards going to this. It's really funny. A couple weeks ago, there was a couple of content creators, including myself, that joked about how annoying it is to get asked for a sideboard guide anytime you post anything on the internet. But it's funny because, like for myself, one of the things that I do when trying a deck is trying to figure out the sideboard and understanding why they did it and adjusting to as I adjust my deck and completing the deck as a 75. So when you pick up somebody else's deck, Seth, are you questioning their sideboard slots? Are you trying to understand their sideboard slots like I'm talking about?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to depend. Like, if it's a deck list by someone who I know personally, and I know that they put a lot of work into it and I respect their opinions, then I'm going to trust it a bit more, but I'm still going to question it. I'm always going to question it. I'm never going to just accept it for what it is. Even if it's right, I'm going to at least question it. And then sometimes I won't make any changes to it if I really like it. Another point that I want to bring up is, I guess this is kind of an offshoot of the original question, but knowing what card, like when you mentioned the treasure map versus Ascana reference, I thought that was a really good one. And knowing what cards other people are playing in the format is really important. Like, I think treasure map might just be like treasure map versus Ascana is a very like if Mortify wasn't being played so much, I feel like it would be much more like play Ascanta. But like the fact that a lot of players are playing Mortify and there's very little answer to artifacts makes me think about cards differently. So like I think about a card like Treasure Map or even a Sorcerer's Spyglass type card. Like I think about those cards very differently because I'm like, there's no way to actually like there's very few people playing the devil or like playing artifact removal. So like just like thinking about cards in reference to what you see and how the games play out, I think is really important as well.
Awesome. I think this is a great question. Does anybody have anything to add before we move on?
I mean, I do feel like we could do a full episode on it, but like I think we covered like the basics. So yeah.
I absolutely think that we could. That's something we'll put on the docket for a future episode for sure.
I also think it's interesting that the question was specifically referencing leagues, which I don't know if that makes me think about it differently or not.
Yeah, it's. I actually tweeted. I tweeted this. It was either today or yesterday. One of the things that I hate the most about the ladder and like playing on the ladder now is like I really miss like the structure of even MTG Arena events. If you play on them now, by the way, if you just want to like win gold, that's a great way to do it. But I really miss like the contained set of matches and this goal that you have to get to the end, and then reflecting on what just happened, which you can do on ladders, just different. I don't know how to explain it.
Did either of you guys happen to make it to top? Out of curiosity, because it's been kind of.
Oh yeah.
Did you all make top 1,000?
We can actually get into that because we can go to #alwaysimproving.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. I'll go first. So I had the most stressful week of my life last week, probably ever, like including like my wife being pregnant and stuff. Like it's just been really rough. I had to figure out a living situation. I almost considered buying a house. Like it was a crazy week.
Wow.
And so I kind of I played some arena. So I had gotten to Mythic. I had gotten to the top 750, and then I had decayed down to I think around 98%. This was pretty early in the month because I got Mythic really early last month, and when I logged in the day of the when it ended, I think I was at 93% or something. So it would have been a pretty big grind, but I was like, I'll just play until I lose, and then I lost 3 matches in, and was like, okay, like that's totally fine. And I lost to a podcast listener, which was cool, so I hope they made it. But I didn't have time to play during the week, and so I was like, well, I'll just give it a shot on the last day, and unfortunately did not get the 10-0.
Fair.
Okay. Is that your always improving, or do you have more on that?
No, but now I get to move on because MCQs are starting, and so one of the things that I'm focusing on in Magic now is trying to get back on the Pro Tours in any way that I can as a dad that has a full-time job. So one of the things that is different for me now than in the past is I don't have Team Constructed Criticism and Team Oasis games to shoot ideas off of and to play test with anymore. And most of my testing is just when I have spare time around being a dad in my job. And so I'll be using our patron group for the Constructed Critics, kind of just as a place where I'm going to post what I'm doing, what I'm playing, and I'm happy to get feedback from any of you. So if you're a patron of $12 or more, feel free to jump into the conversation. I'm going to be posting just about everything I'm doing. I have a 5K, a free 5K that I'm playing in that I qualified for an invitational here at the end of this month. I just found out the format is Modern, Standard, and Draft for top 8. So, a 3-format tournament's going to be fun. I I'm currently in between playing a couple of modern decks for that one, and I'm pretty locked in on a couple standard decks too. So if you want access to that kind of stuff, join that group. But it's funny to be back on the PTQ grind after the PPTQ grind was like just show up and play whatever deck it felt like. So it's gonna be fun, and I hope to get some testing in with some close friends, as well as focusing on Magic in a way that I used to, rather than I really hated the PPTQ grind. Like I legitimately hated it. I thought it was probably the worst thing to ever happen to competitive Magic, and I qualified for the Pro Tour on it. So like if I hated it, it was probably pretty bad. I don't. Neither of you guys ever had to play one, right?
I played in 2 for fun because there was a point in time where I was locked for gold, but I had not played the last PT yet. So it was a weird situation. I think I wasn't locked for having even, I don't know. Anyway, whatever. I was qualified. I was going to be qualified for the next PT, but I was still allowed to play because if I didn't go to PT, I wouldn't. Yeah. So I played in 2 PPTQs just to play some local events, and I ended up scooping in like the semis and the finals of them. Yeah. But I thought, I don't know, like I don't want to criticize the system because I would criticize those 2 events specifically because they were at stores that, I mean, they were really, really overcrowded. Okay, like to the point where like you couldn't leave the tournament hall because there's a table blocking the door. Like it was that bad, and it was a miserable experience. And they had set a cap, and then more people showed up, and they wanted the entry fee, so they just added players, and it was just like not. I don't know. Yeah. So
I thought they trusted far too many stores to run events. A lot of the stores like there were PPTQs where they gave out like a box with like 80 people. Like the whole tournament was like a box.
Yeah, prize support was bad too because they're paying judges and.
So then the judge, like they had to get L2s. It was the worst. And now that they're gone, we have tons of 1Ks happening again across our valley and stuff. Like I'm so happy with the change, and I'm really excited for the future, and I'm really excited to prepare in a way that I think is more conducive to getting better at Magic for me personally. And so I'll be sharing that in the Constructive Critics group, and I just wanted to share that this week.
Cool.
So. I'm glad. Yeah, I mean, for me, I like the idea of having to win only one event versus having to win 2 like that. I mean, but
I actually thought like the PPTQ though, the system for someone who really wants to qualify, I think the system was easier.
Well, I think it's easier to top 4 an event than to win an event. I
felt at least in Montreal, it felt like there were enough tournaments that the really good players were gonna win one, and then the RPTQ was a really good event.
No, I agree. I never had a problem qualifying for the RPTQ. That's not the problem. The problem is that I was forced to qualify for a different like. I knew I was going to qualify, but it was like this. So I go and win the first one, right? And then I don't get to play Magic in my state for 3 months.
Yeah.
Because all of the stores, all they're banking on is their one PPTQ for their one big event, and then like I just have nothing to do locally for forever. It sucked.
Yeah, no, the system was not. I mean, there's definitely flaws, but it's gone now. So
yeah. Anyway, that's me, John. Yeah. What about you, man?
Well, okay. So there's my always improving. So I have 2 things I want to say. Okay, one is related to the Mythic thing that, but my always improving. So I already mentioned it briefly, but basically, I decided that I needed to test my ability to play a deck that can lend itself to draws in a competitive environment. And that was what I really like. I just basically said, yeah, I don't care if I do badly. I'd rather just do that and find out. So I played War at Calgary, did okay. Don't really know though that I would play it in a PT because I'll say like, GP Calgary, my opponents were, top notch. Like people that were dead just conceded game 1. They didn't like make me play for 10 minutes to mill them with like an Ibn Rivulet, and everyone was friendly. I don't know. So like I had a really good experience in the tournament. I didn't go to time in any round. There was one for sure where I lost in 2 games where if I'd won that game, we would have drawn. But it's sad to say, but I feel that at the PT, there's enough people that are basically going to be willing to cheat the clock. And I just I'm gonna be stuck with at least one draw. So I don't think I play it. But so that's my always improving to find that out now, so I know how to invest my time going forward. As for the top 1,000, I basically made a decision. So there's been a lot of changes to Magic. Some that have been not good for me or whatever, but most of them have been good for other people. That's okay. But what I decided is like I need to invest my Magic time into areas where I'm getting the benefits I want. So I just played no arena this month. I was like, I have no standard tournaments for 3 months at least. There's no GPs. The PT's modern. I just don't want to invest how many number of hours it would take to grind to Mythic for what amounts to basically entry fee to a GP. Like if I top 1,000, I'll be one of 2,000 or 3,000 people who get to play in a weekend to try to get one of 16 slots for a PT. It's just not. There's just not the value there for me to spend that amount of time.
Do you plan on doing it at the end of this month after the Pro Tour?
No, I'm planning to not play in arena unless testing standard is somewhat relevant for me.
Okay.
I'm not gonna trying to qualify for all 7 PTs in order to get pseudo gold is just not a practical thing, unless it's fine if you're doing it just for fun. Like if you just want to play arena because it's fun, I mean that's more power to you. It is fun. I want to play competitive Magic that is relevant, and my relevant tournaments on the horizon are basically modern. So that's what I want to be playing, and limited for War of the Sparks. So yeah, I just decided I'm going to sit this one out. I did play like 4 or 5 matches early in the month. Just like they put me in Plat 4, I guess, when you go down for Mythic, and I'm still Plat 4. So like, didn't really make an effort. But I think I'm happy with that. Like, I just want to be like I don't want to just do whatever they say I'm supposed to do. I want to do the things that I'm going to enjoy and the things that will help me achieve whatever goals I set for myself.
Yeah, I think I felt similarly. I don't know if I'm gonna try this month just because the stressors of my life haven't changed much. I'm going to buy a house next year. That's a new thing that's decided after last week.
Yeah.
And so, like, just things in my life are about to change. But I do expect that part of my change will be playing more Magic because I've cut all of the other content that I was doing. Like, I canceled all of the content for He's Game Media, including another podcast that I was doing, and like I'm solely focusing on Magic for the time being because it's like the thing that I really enjoy. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the Mythic GP because first of all I think playing up Magic Arena, like you said, is really fun. Like it is the most fun that I have playing Magic outside of professional REL Magic. Like Day 2 of a GP and the Pro Tour are my favorites. I'm not lucky enough to have played in Worlds, but or good enough. Let's be clear. but like I don't know, Arena is just really fun and refreshing.
You know what else was going to be what I was like really wanted to avoid? If I spent like 100 hours grinding to a top 1,000 or whatever it takes, and then they announce that the GP weekend whatever is just on a date where like I have something.
Yeah, right? That's frustrating. Like, that they haven't announced
if it's GP Seattle weekend or something, I'm like, well, I want to go to the GP because like I made plans and whatever.
Yeah.
And now I have to make a choice, and
that makes sense.
This has been a problem with like, so a really good example of this is MCQs aren't announced yet, right? Like we know that Oasis got one, our sponsor at Oasis got one, and we know that their tentative date, but they haven't finalized dates yet. And like people are creating Facebook events, and like people are like, okay, but like what other ones can I go to? So I understand that frustration.
I wish I could give one of you at least my invite to the tournament.
Can you not go?
I'm already qualified for the PT.
No.
To the oh yeah.
I finished in the top 1,000.
I see.
Well, congratulations.
Good job, man.
Yeah.
And you did it on best of 1 too, so you did it on hard mode, like super hard mode.
The one guy that doesn't benefit at all from it, the 3 of us.
Yeah. Well, Seth. Speaking of best of 1, let's talk about let's talk about your event, man. So we already kind of talked about it at the beginning, but do you want to talk about the Matt Nass match?
Yeah, the Matt Nass match was pretty insane. If you weren't watching it, basically, we were playing an Esper Control Mirror, a lot of the same cards, a couple differences in the lists. I had 2 negates. He had 2 Masterminds acquisitions in his list, where I only had 1. But we played a pretty insane game where we were just top decking like through like the first like 30 cards or like whatever. And neither of us really found a Teferi. Finally, I got one and I was able to protect it enough. I used up a bunch of my resources, which in hindsight, like had I like somehow preserved like one of my resources for later in the game, I maybe could have won, but I ended up embleming, just kind of like going all in, assuming that my Teferi emblem was just gonna win me the game without necessarily thinking enough beyond, okay, you have a Teferi emblem, but like, is that actually a lock? And then I started to think about it more after it was too late. But basically, I emblemed the Teferi, drew all of the cards in my deck, and then started like playing multiple Teferis each turn to like speed up the emblem. But the reason why I was doing that was I did at some point in the game think about Mastermind's acquisition being Matt's last out, because he used 1 at one point, but he still had that 1 left, and that was a very real problem for me if you were watching that match.
Did you target black sources?
What? I targeted the blue sources without necessarily thinking enough about it. I could have targeted the black sources. I don't know if that would have been fast enough, because he had like a lot of black sources, but sure. I ended up targeting the blue sources for some reason. And I definitely should have targeted the black sources with the Teferi exiles, but I don't think that was my, like, there was a couple like small things that I did that had I done them differently, I think could have won me the game. Maybe, but anyways, he did Masterminds for Unmoored Ego, and I had no cards besides Teferi left, so like that was actually just lethal.
Sure. So one of my favorite things about you as a Magic player, because I'm a fan of Magic. Like I've openly told Paulo that I'm his biggest fan. Like I root for Paulo at every event. At this point, I root for Seth Manfield at every event, and like I'm just a fan of Magic. Like I just enjoy watching good Magic. And one of my favorite things about you as a player is that you think a lot in your matches. Like you think way far more than I think. Like I'm on autopilot a significant percentage of the time. What do you think it was about this match where you just went all in on that Teferi emblem? Like, do you think that there's a reason that was different for you than something like Worlds or something like the Pro Tour?
So I think that's a reasonable point. I was relying on the reps I had with the deck. Like I played maybe 1,000 games with the deck. I played a lot of games with it. So I was on almost autopilot mode without thinking about it, because I never experienced a situation where I had emblem Teferi and then lost, or seen it. So I hadn't been thinking about it enough, and that was a problem of mine. I think that, yeah, like I was trying to play pretty quickly, like with pace. I wasn't like sitting there and like at the end, like the last couple turns or whatever, when I knew I was gonna lose, I was trying to think like, how can I possibly get out of it? But then it was too late.
Well, it's interesting because there is a reason for you to go on autopilot mode versus the Pro Tour, right? Which is that the rounds are condensed into, and like a life total thing matters, right? Whereas that's not the case at the Pro Tour or at Worlds.
Yeah, that is true. You definitely want to. You have to finish the game. There wasn't going to be any like conceding just because I had the emblem. It was actually, yeah, that was part of it. It was just part of it was just, thinking like I'm just going to emblem this Teferi, and my mindset when I was embleming the Teferi was that I had won the game. Like I thought I had won. So I was just going to do it and then play quickly and just, win. But I did not like when someone is winning, a lot of times when players are winning and they're ahead by what they at least believe to be a wide margin, they'll stop thinking as much. I think it happens with almost everyone, where if you think you're in like a winning position where you're like 90% or whatever to win, you're just gonna like try to go through the motions and close out the game. That's what I was doing. And I think had I taken maybe some time, I had a flip to Scanta. In retrospect, what I could have done is kept cards in my deck, rather than going completely out of cards in my deck, so that because I flipped a Scanta with like only a couple cards left, but had I started tucking Teferis with cards still in my library, I think that was my way to win that game, because then I can get egoed but still have a Teferi on the battlefield, and so if I had done that, then I would still have that one Teferi. And as it turned out, he had already used all of his Vraska's contempts. And if I've already, so then he would, then I think I would have won had I thought about it, which I didn't. I was actually like, when I lost, I was just like, this was just a great game. And that still is my takeaway from it. I really enjoyed it. And I think it helps a little bit that I would have had to win 3 more after that to get out of there. Probably makes me a little less like had I been like playing for top 4, I probably would feel a little bit worse, to be honest with you, because that would just sting way more. But it was a really good game, and Matt found the line. I did not think about the line enough, and I think that game goes to show that there is more to best of one than maybe meets the eye. And yeah, it was cool.
Was it clear to you that the acquisition was going to get Unmoored Ego, or was it just that's a danger card?
I was earlier thinking about Nezahal. I was thinking about Sorcerer's Spyglass.
Yeah, Sorcerer's Spyglass would have been my first guess also.
But then I realized it was clear to me eventually that it was going to be Unmoored Ego when it happened. I realized before Matt cast the acquisition that I was dead.
Yeah,
but not early enough.
So cool.
I actually have a question about the like I didn't really understand. I don't really know what the format was in terms of the rules. When I was watching, I didn't watch the whole weekend, but I watched some of it. I never saw anyone with rope. Was that in phased out?
Yeah, that was this. We were playing on separate servers, and so there was no rope. There was no. I believe they made it so there was no time. Like there was no time pressure at all in the tournament. So you couldn't,
because you had a clock.
No, there's no clock either. It was just there was no time pressure. I mean, there was a round clock, but there was no in-game clock, is what I'm saying. There was no in-game time pressure. They just said that slow play was going to be strictly enforced, which I have no idea what that means. I don't think anyone actually got any reprimands for playing slowly. But on the flip side of that, everything that I watched was at a reasonable pace for the most part.
It was the fastest paced Magic I've ever watched.
And they did change the the time of the rounds from 45 minutes to 60 minutes, because like I think that was a good change, because like some of those Esper control mirrors just naturally lend themselves to longer games. And so when I was playing that on day 2, I knew that we probably weren't going to go to time because we had 60 minutes. But yeah, I think that was like there was one match in particular that I remember early in the tournament that finished before its natural conclusion, which was, I think it was Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry and Wyatt.
And that was the 45-minute timer. And yeah, I think that wasn't enough time. So I'm glad that they at least retroactively put in additional time. But yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering. Yeah.
I will say this. This was my favorite Magic tournament to watch. Probably outside of the World Championship in like a long time. Like I don't remember. I think the arena makes Magic a better viewing experience. Like I always knew what was going on. It was refreshing. I do think that the format was not my favorite. There was a lot of mono red and a lot of Esper. And
there's a lot of mono white though as well.
There was. I mean, on coverage there was as far as macro archetypes, there was not a lot of them. so
like I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that, like, favorite tournament of all time. Like, but you didn't like the format. Do you like the fact that there were personalities as opposed to just pros? Like, what made it so good for you?
So first of all, so I've been watching a lot of Smash Bros. Recently, just because I'm like trying to get better at that game. And one of the really cool things about Smash Bros. Is like how fast paced it is, how quick the games are, right? And that was very true this weekend compared to something like an SEG. And I don't even have a short attention span, so it's not like that's the thing. It was more exciting. I also did think that kind of like what Seth said, right? Like if he had lost for top 4, he would have lost a lot of money, right? And when you're playing for the stakes that these players were playing at in the later rounds, you could feel it. And that was, I don't know, it felt exciting. I also thought the commentating was really great. I know that Oliver T, I don't know how to say his last name.
Tamaiko?
Yeah, he complained.
I don't know which one you're talking about.
No, the first one you said. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he had complained on Twitter about the coverage. I completely disagree. I watch a ton of NBA, a ton of NFL, a ton of, like, sports coverage. People just mess up stuff all the time. So, like, they said a Hearthstone commentator who was commentating this game said lifesteal instead of lifelink, and it's like, okay, but did you know what they meant? Like, I feel like we're cherry picking here. I thought the coverage was A+. There was a little too much pyrotechnics. Did the smoke affect your gameplay, Seth?
there was definitely a moment where I literally was getting like embers burning on my arm or something. I was literally like right by like a fire, like trying to set up a photo, and I was like, oh, what's this like sizzling?
You're like, do I smell burning hair? Oh, that's me. So that was too much.
No, it was great. I really, like, when I was not playing the tournament, I was literally just I literally watched the whole thing besides when I was playing it, because I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it so much. Part of that was that I enjoyed the best of one format also. So I'd been prepping for it. So that was part of it. And then I'd gotten to know, I do know a lot of those personalities. So getting to watch people that I know and am familiar with and are fellow competitors of mine. And then the big one, of course, is that it was on MTG Arena, which I think just makes for a better viewing experience. As much as I love tabletop and I love playing with the real cards, but watching, like, knowing exactly what players have in hand or what their decisions are, I think that even for, like, I was staying with a friend for this tournament who hadn't played Magic at all before Arena came out, and now he's fully gotten into the game, and has learned it because of Arena. And there's a lot of players that aren't at my level who, if they're looking at it, coverage of a event like coming up for Modern in London, like they might not be able to, like, just by looking at someone's hand and like them flicking some cards around, like you can't necessarily see those cards or see everything on the battlefield, or like sometimes the commentators are not talking about the game, they're talking about something outside the game, because those commentators don't actually know what's going on in the game. So there's been some, I thought that the coverage was really good, that they brought in a lot of personalities, that
I also think
likable personalities. So not just for me, but like I think as a community, the numbers clearly indicate that it was the most successful from a coverage perspective.
Yeah, it's not even close, right? The Pro Tour gets 40,000 people. This got 130 just on the mainstream, and well over 180 throughout the weekend. Like, I don't know.
It was very impressive. I'm like, it's got me thinking, wow, like maybe maybe this esports thing is gonna.
It was the number 2 thing on Twitch. Number 2.
I looked for the week. The week total, Magic was in the top 5 games.
Yeah.
Of the week. The Magic was not the only game being streamed at PAX, but.
Did you say it peaked at 3? I thought it peaked at 2 at like 185.
I didn't say that.
I think it. I don't know. I think it peaked at about 150 was what I heard, but
no, not the individual stream. Magic the Gathering on Twitch.
Oh, sure.
So for those who don't know, they invited people to stream over the Invitational. So like there was I think there was a Spanish and a Japanese one that was streaming over it.
Cool.
So. But you know what else happened in that tournament? Now that we're done with our very long hashtag I was improving this week, I hope people enjoyed it because that was fun.
I feel like we've already gone through a lot, but this is going to be like I feel like always improving is going to be like a pretty big. Well, it has been a big part.
I didn't know we were still in always improving.
We're not. We just talked about the Mythic Invitational. Let's talk about something else that came from the Invitational though, and that is preview cards for War of the Spark. So I just want to thank our listeners before we get started. Constructive Criticism did get preview cards for the first time. We got 4, and we're going to be doing an episode to talk about those cards in a limited perspective for the first time on Constructive Criticism when that show comes out. That show comes out. I gave these guys the date literally.
Spencer, you may be talking about them from a limited perspective. I'm going to already have them in my constructed decks. So we'll see how that works.
Dude, there was one of them that for a hot minute I thought was like super modern playable. So I was like, wow, this card's broken. But let's talk about some of our favorites from the first. We each picked one. If we have time, we'll do more.
And I also have a card I'm going to be previewing on my stream next Tuesday, so if you want to check that out.
Do you know what time your stream will start, Steph?
Probably around 10 in the morning Eastern time.
Cool.
Yeah.
So check that out. There's a link to Seth's stream in the show notes every week. Excuse me. So check that out. And then ours I think is like I'll put the date in the show notes so that you can look forward to that show as well. But can we start with mine? I'm excited.
Sure. I don't know what yours is.
I put it in the chat, John.
Okay, well, tell me again.
It's Paradise Druid. It's an elf druid. It's 1 and a green for a creature, and then it has hexproof as long as it's untapped. And then you can tap it to add 1 of any color to your mana pool.
It's a 1/1, is that right?
It's a 2/1.
It's a 2/1.
It's a 2/1?
This is sweet. This is here's the thing, Incubation Druid. I like you a lot. In some decks, you're really, really great. but in other decks, including what I believe is my baby Gruul, I think this card does something that I'm really interested in. You know, I'm really interested in ramping into my Domries. I'm really interested in, attacking with this against control decks. Here's the thing. Rattleclaw Mystic qualified me for a Pro Tour. Lotus Cobra, my favorite card of all time. I'm all about that 2/1 mana creature life, John.
I do like Lotus Cobra.
Lotus Cobra, literally my favorite card of all. This card, I'm so excited. And people are probably looking at this and like this is just like a 2/1 mana creature. But to me, it's more than that. This is the sweetness. This is everything I want in Magic.
Do you think it would be better if it was a 1/2? I'm just out of curiosity.
No, not really. So it's because of Chain Whirler, right?
Chain Whirler, Fanatical Firebrand, Fungal Infection.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, like, it has... So Chain Whirler is... You can get a use out of it against Firebrand, right? Because you can tap it to get the mana to get your thing out. The Chain Whirler one is, like, a real concern, obviously. It makes me sad that it's, like, not a 2/2. Because, like, would it really matter if it was a 2/2 other than Chain Whirler?
Yes, it would really matter.
Come on.
But the hexproof wallets untapped thing is pretty sweet, right? It means that once Chain Whirler rotates, they can't just like shock my 2-drop and then I'm saddened. I've seen a lot of people compare this to Sylvan Caryatid, and I don't really like that comparison.
Because Sylvan Caryatid
survives Chain Whirler.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the card I want to compare to, like right off the bat, though, is just Incubation Druid.
Yeah, I think that's its competition here, right? Like, I think that if you want Druid of the Cowl, you want it for different reasons, right? You want it because it's a 1/3, and if you want this card, it's because you want to be attacking with it. So for example, if I'm playing a Gruul deck that wants a 2-mana ramp creature, I would rather play this than those two cards. But like in something like Sultai, like or Green Black that Seth played, right? I actually might want the 1/3 that blocks really well. So
it's weird how there was like no mana creatures. I feel like, and now like we have Llanowar Elves and Incubation Druid. Like it's like, and now this card, it's like flooding the mana creatures.
Yeah, I think this card's really, really playable, and the fact that it's a Bird of Paradise is also really enticing, right? Like, it is... Incubation Druid did that a lot of the time, but this card just kind of guarantees that, and I really like that about it as well. It lets you, like, kind of cheat on different sources and something like Gruul, where you want to play a lot of green, or you want to play a lot of red. Or it lets you cast, your double-colored spells faster in different decks. I like that a lot about this card.
Is this better than Leyline Prowler? I just noticed there's, like, this other... Do you guys know what that card does? There's this other...
It's the black-green one, right?
Yeah, it's a black-green mana dork that with that a colorless, a black, and a green for a 2/3 with Death Touch and Lifelink to add 1 mana of any color. But it is a 3 mana.
Is that card better than the dragon one?
What's the dragon one?
The one from the last core set that makes a you can sacrifice it to make a 5/5 or something.
Are you talking about the artifact?
No. It's a 2/2 for 3 that taps for I think any color of mana, and then you can pay 7 to make a 5/5 dragon.
Well, this one has
Death Touch and Lifelink. Yeah, I think that Paradise Druid's better than the Prowler. Does it? But it taps for any color.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's possible that like there are decks that would rather have the 2/3 Lifelink Death Touch. Like if you're trying to specifically ramp to 3 to 5, right? Then that would be better. But I don't know. Paradise Druid to me is.
I mean, Lifelink is pretty good if there's a bunch of like the Lifelink plus Death Touch combination is really good against. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think this card is going to be like a constructed staple or whatever, but like I think that it's definitely interests me.
Yeah, Seth, I just want to attack my control opponent for 6 with this Paradise Druid. and then also cast a Vivian or a Vraska off of it,
Yeah, I don't know. The hexproof is pretty interesting.
Yeah, if you want to use it for mana, you just gotta wait till you
get
to it.
I guess it does make those removal spells that I was mentioning worse. So I guess it's a matter of you can get it, you can make it, you can use it at least, you can get your one-time use out of it if it's not like a wrath effect, right? So that is pretty valuable even if it dies to like a firebrand or a fungal. So it'll be interesting to see. I feel like incubation, I don't know. I've been starting to enjoy incubation druids.
Yeah, my instinct is that I prefer incubation in most situations.
Yeah, but I think that something like Sultai probably prefers incubation druid, and my instinct is that something like Gruul prefers this.
That could make sense.
John, I know it's not Lotus Curve, but are you feeling this at all?
Truthfully, I'm not, and it's not because I think the card's terrible, but my aggro decks, I want a threat on turn 2, like more than just like a mana creature. Like I want like Growth Chamber Guardian, or I mean even Zerta Goblin wasn't even really good enough for Gruul, and that was like a 3/3. But I mean, it depends what you're ramping into, I suppose. But like if you're ramping, I just want Incubation Druid, and if you're just playing a 2/1, whether it has hexproof or not, if I'm attacking with it, I feel like I'm not getting enough value. But yeah. I mean, it's in the range where it could be playable or something, but it doesn't really excite me.
It's got a power level to it where it's not like when I look at this card on power level, I look at it as a potential playable. But then once I consider that there's also Llanowar Elves and Incubation Druid in the format already, and there's other good green 2-drops like Growth Chamber Guardian, and as John said, then it's like it's got an uphill battle. I'm sure it'll cease. There will be people that play it in something, but
yeah, I think one thing to also think about is there was a time where people were just playing Merfolk Branchwalker because it was the best green 2-drop, right? It's obviously not. And
well, if you miss every single time, I guess you still get a land. So
Is it better? Is it better?
That one, when they chain roller it, you're not down a card. This one,
it's not going to be in standard with chain roller forever, Seth.
This card's okay. Is what I would say. Like
you're right.
I'm glad you like it.
Be modern soon. They'll both be modern soon enough.
I picked a green card as well. Do you want me to do mine next?
Yeah, and I think your card's sweet and interesting.
Well, I picked 2 cards, but the one I want to talk about, I don't know which one you're talking about, but the one I want to talk about is the Planeswalker.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know how to pronounce it, but maybe Jiang Yangu, is that how you pronounce it?
I mean, I was never going to try and say it, so I'm glad somebody did.
All right, so let me read what it does here. Let me pull it up.
Jiang Yangu Wildcrafter.
Wildcrafter. It costs 3 mana, a green and 2. It's a legendary Planeswalker, Yangu, 3 loyalty. It has a static ability. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has add a mana of any color. And you can use a -1 to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature.
And it comes in with 3 loyalty.
Yeah, 3 loyalty.
Make your own mana dorks with this.
Yeah.
You can make your other guy Chamberlain proof.
This is a non-bow. This is really a non-bow with your card, Spencer.
No, because it makes it Chainwhirler proof.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's early in the spoiler season, so we don't really have the full context of the set, so it's hard to know like how good this card will be. I like some things about it. I like how it interacts with Adapt, for example, and Amass, where your creatures are naturally going to want, or like Adapt, for example, is generally mana intensive, and also your creatures get counters. I've wanted to play Biomet's Familiar for a while, and I just couldn't really figure out a way to do that, so maybe that has a place. It also works with Amass, although that's probably, I think, different colors, so you'd have to play multiple colors.
Incubation Druid, you can put a counter on it, so it makes 3 mana.
Yeah, well, like you can adapt right away, so you can play your Growth Chamber and adapt right away with the Planeswalker, and while you're also deploying something else to the board. Once you get like Biogenic Ooze going, for example, it can be really powerful, and it's just like you know, remember that deck, the Cryptolith Right Lone Triad deck, where you just sort of like play a bunch of like dorks and they just produce mana and you just go off with some combo. Like I feel like there's potential for that with this card. Once we see all the pieces, we'll know maybe if that's possible. But it's a card that just really interested me.
Yeah, it looks like it could be just a really insane synergy piece for any type of like Simic style or.
Yeah, I agree. I think the synergies is what interests me a lot, and also like the fact that I think that this pseudo protects itself, right? Because it makes your creatures bigger, right? So you play this and it adds power to the board, making this harder to attack. And even if they can like double it, like they're not going to double attack into this to lose a guy unless they have to. And even then, you've like gotten a card and value out of it. So I really like that about this card.
Yeah. Also, so there's a few things like even in the fail case scenarios where like it's not taking over the game, you can play it, put a -1 counter on a creature, and immediately get a mana off it, which is kind of nice. Cards like I forgot the name of it, the Loxodon, the white Loxodon, Venerated Loxodon. Yeah. Like that puts counters on all your creatures, and then you can just get a lot of mana and do stuff with that. Yeah, it's got potential. I'd say it's got potential, and also just going for 3 mana, getting 3 +1/+1 counters. If they can't kill it, like that's even if you don't have synergy, that's okay.
Yeah, and spread across the bodies that you want to is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really fun card.
Should we talk about the Time Raveler that is the first or second best blue-white mirror breaker in this set?
Yeah, so we're all doing like one card this week. We'll probably talk about some. I'm sure we'll be talking about more cards in the future.
We should probably just cover a bunch of cards next week as the episode, just like to get them out of the way. But
yeah, but first of all, I'm super psyched about all of the Planeswalkers. Like a lot of them are the ones we're familiar with, but I don't think there's been like a Yongu or like whatever. So like there's also new ones. Yeah. This one is Teferi. Like that's a Planeswalker that we are all.
It's my homeboy.
Know about.
It's my homie. I play him in Modern. I play him in Standard.
Yeah, and this one is it's good. It's Azorius, of course. Teferi, Time Reveler, 3 mana, colorless, a white and a blue. Comes in with 4 loyalty. Each opponent can cast spells only anytime they could cast. Each opponent can cast spells only anytime they could cast a sorcery. Until your next turn, you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash as the +1. The -3, return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand and draw a card. So it's kind of a lot. It's a lot to me for 3 mana.
Okay, can I ask a rules question that maybe you know the answer to?
Sure.
If 2 players have Teferi, they both have this, right? And then you +1, can you cast your spells on their turn?
Yes, I believe so.
It's like basically going to be timestamped because why?
It's a great. I'm not a judge. I'm just guessing.
Okay. We're just players.
I actually have been a judge. Can you repeat the scenario?
Okay, so the static ability is your opponents can only cast spells when they could cast a sorcery, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now if you both have it and you +1, it now says that you can cast sorcery spells as though they had flash.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I don't know. Can you cast spells on your opponent's turn? I don't know.
I would assume the answer is no, because I don't think. So let me just read this really quick. Until your next turn, cast sorceries as though they had flash. So it's not saying that you can. Let me just. I will answer this question shortly.
Okay,
let's talk about the other things while he looks that up, I guess.
For some reason, gut is saying yes, but I really now want to know the answer to that. But yeah, so anyways.
I feel like that, okay, so I think that it could come down to a timestamp thing because they're both affecting the same.
Yeah, so the 7028A nobody cares about this. Flash is a static ability that functions in any zone where you could play cards with Flash. Means you can play this card anytime you could cast an instant. So yes, if you plus with your opponent having a Teferi in play, I believe what will happen is they will say that you can cast spells at instant speed at that time.
All right, well, we'll wait for the FAQ to be sure, but anyway.
So Spencer, you're saying that you said no, and now you're saying yes. So should we actually be confident?
Yeah, well, I said no, and then I reread the card, and then I
feel
read.
Like it's gonna be yes.
Yeah, I think it will
but
be.
I don't know.
I think it will be yes after reading Flash. I did not expect Flash to literally say this. Like, I did not expect it to say you may play this card anytime you could play an instant. I thought it would be less specific, less broad than that, I guess. Like, anyway. Well, actually, no. I'm going to change my answer again.
I feel like your reasoning makes me think no, but I actually think it is yes.
Yeah. So now that I'm saying this out loud, right?
Only anytime level 3. Sorry, we're not. Level twos only.
Yeah.
Here.
This level one is doubting himself. Or X level 1 even.
Okay, so I do one thing about this card that I really like. It's one of the few planeswalkers that has a plus.
Yeah, so
I think the uncommons. It seems like the uncommons don't have pluses, and maybe the rares do, something like that.
That's correct. So the uncommons only have minuses. The rares have 2 abilities with a plus and a minus, and then Nicol is broken.
Well,
okay, gotcha.
All right.
So his second ability is the -3, right?
Yep.
Which is return up to 1 artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand and draw a card. Which is pretty, honestly, with a 3-mana Planeswalker, when I read this, I was like, I wonder if I can abuse that in Modern with my own deck. Like, returning value stuff and then playing it again.
So, yeah, I think that this is, the -3 is where, like, most of the value of the card comes from. The other part of it can be really good. Each opponent can cast spells only anytime they could cast a sorcery, but that part of it seems very matchup dependent. Like if you're playing a control mirror or playing against a bunch of counter spells, then that could just be absurd. But like a lot of times that part might not be relevant, like against an aggro deck. So I think I see this as in two different ways. I see it as a potentially just a good card, like just a good main deck staple, possibly. But I could also see it like at worst being a very, very, very good sideboard card in these control mirrors.
It's insane as a sideboard card, right? Like just its static ability alone. Between this and they also printed like you'll never see another blue-white player in Modern playing negate again. Also, because Dovin's Veto also is in this.
That's for sure wrong, but keep going.
Wait, you think a blue-white player will play negate over Dovin's Veto?
I don't know. I think that there certainly will be some people that do it. Yes.
Interesting.
I mean, it's like blue-black players play negate over Countersquall.
That's true. That's fair. I think that the effect is substantially different. Like, because Countersquall deals 3 damage, right? So, like,
I think it loses you.
Sure.
Lose 2 life.
Oh, 2 life. I
mean, yeah, Dovin's Veto, for all intents and purposes, is just a better negate. But I think there could be circumstances like, I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason.
My point is that between Teferi Time Raveler and Dovin's Veto, like we have some really big mirror breakers in this set that I was actually going to ask both of you.
They just played Esper mirrors all weekend, so why wouldn't they make the Esper mirror more difficult?
It's actually, my question is, like, at this point, is it worth playing black anymore? I don't know.
In Esper, well, The black is you're not replacing you're not
it's Kaya's Wrath and
Kaya's Wrath and like Mortify and Cries with these cards.
Yeah, Mortify is a pretty big game.
I definitely think that there will be people that try to play straight blue-white. I don't think Dovin's Veto, it's still not as main deckable as a card like Absorb.
And it's certainly... And I think the thing that it's fighting with is Thought Erasure, right? Is that the name of the discard spell?
Yeah.
Yeah, which, you know, that's... It's I think those cards are difficult. Discard in the main deck is substantially better than Negate in the main deck, right?
I feel like this card is an excellent sideboard card. I don't see it as a main deck card that much.
Yeah.
I feel like you're playing it only if the static ability is good. I feel like that's where you want it. I don't think you want this card for the -3. Like, yes, you do get value that way, but it's pretty slow to get.
Yeah, I think Teferi for sure. I want for the static ability.
Yeah, the Dovin's Veto, I feel like I would play it over Negate. If I would want Negate in my main deck, I would play like a Dovin's Veto or something. For Teferi, I feel like so in the matchups where the static ability is bad, the bounce should probably be pretty decent, like decent at least. And it does remind me a lot of, you know, a card that was banned from Standard, and it's got that like Reflector Mage kind of power level to me. And I've heard those comparisons, even though Reflector Mage was a creature. This bounce plus draw plus something else attached to it makes me feel like there's going to be blue-white players that have maybe some amount in the main, some amount in the sideboard, but
yeah. Well, especially it's going to be really good in the mirror, right? So like it might be good enough that you just play one or two anyway.
Yeah.
Even if it's only really for some matchups.
Well, I think that it shows that Wizards has learned a lot about the unsummon ability because they made this a -3 instead of like a -2 or a -1, right? Like,
well, come on.
They didn't make it a -4.
Yeah. I almost felt like it should have just come like. It should just come in with 3 loyalty. Well, obviously that would make Teferi way weaker, but just being able to immediately use that minus and then still have like like a lot of the times you're gonna be minusing it, and your opponent's only gonna have
that's true
one creature in play.
That's
like
true. It's a 3-drop. Yeah, that's
the fact that it's turn 3
you
makes
play it, bounce it, draw a card. Then if your opponent spends their entire turn just playing that creature again, then you probably. Like, then you have a Planeswalker in play, it's turn 4, like, you probably can just, like, snowball. Seems pretty strong.
Yep.
Cool.
It's also, like, nice to have, like, it hits enchantment or artifact. Like, you know, you can deal with, like, some problematic, you can deal with, like, a search for a scan, whatever, like, there's things.
Like a treasure map. Now your treasure maps.
Yeah.
Treasure map may not be as good. I'm serious. Like, you play a turn 2 treasure map, then they play Teferi and bounce it. You're like, that actually seems like pretty decent.
Yeah.
I mean, they can bounce. They can bounce the both of them, right? So.
Yeah, they can bounce both of them, but.
Yeah, this card seems pretty good to me. I'll be interested to see if it's main deck playable, especially considering that you can play it alongside the other Teferi with like no punishment. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
this seems like quite a good card, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's going to be it for Preview Talk this week. We'll probably do Preview Talk throughout most of the preview season, if not just entire episodes on it, just because I think it's what people want to hear about, and you know, I'm happy talking about it. But anything you guys want to say before we go today?
No, I think that's it.
Nope, I'm gonna try to learn some of the new cards by our next episode.
Yeah.
Find some that you find exciting. You know, get that Death Sprout art on your desktop because it's a sweet one. All right, well, thank you everybody so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next week with another episode of Constructive Criticism.